What's up, YouTube? Got another video for you today here. Today we'll be doing a meta deck tier list and decks that I think that should be in everybody's consideration for the YCS in Pasadena coming up. With the announcement of the Brave archetype being pushed back, I do believe this means that the format is more defined for this tournament. And I think that these will be the best decks to take for the tournament, as well as just an overall analysis of the meta based on the remote YCS and other things of the sort. There are a lot of decks here, so I will not be describing too many of them in depth, especially when we get to like tier 3 and lower, because those decks don't really have a lot of place in the meta, but you might see them from time to time. Most things will be in order, at least to the best of my ability. In tier 1, I will definitely have the 3 best decks in my opinion in order, and we'll go ahead and start with one of those. And to nobody's surprise, Swordsoul. This deck is insane. Is very consistent. It does just lose to a single hand trap, but you know, the boards it makes are very good, very consistent. It's got a great grind game. The 10Es push the deck forward quite a lot. There's a DPE variant that goes around, and this deck is just very good. I do believe that the 10E version is the best, not the DPE, even though people still play it. There's also a blind second variant. The deck is just very good. Yeah, and my first spot for a tier 2 deck will be one of the other newer decks, is Floowandereeze. I do believe Floowandereeze is really good at this current standpoint. I just think that it has some inconsistency issues that are preventing it from being tier 1, and that gets alleviated a lot in the next set with their new Rota. It'll really help unlock the deck. It's got a lot of cool variants. You could do the Dogmatica version, you could do Anti-Spell Dark Simorgh. There's a lot of ways to play the deck, and in my opinion, it is the definite best tier 2 deck out there. Also, I would like to note that just because your deck is in tier 2, tier 3, rogue, or anything else, does not mean that your deck is unplayable. I think that every deck at a local level and regional level can be played this format. Now, tier 1 and tier 2 should be where you're looking at if you're going for a YCS. You know, maybe tier 2 if you're expecting a lot of Phantom Knights, you want to take Floowandereeze, because Floowandereeze has a really good matchup into Phantom Knights, since they're so hardcore focused on Scythe DPE, and you have ways to dodge their negates. So, you know, take that all this with a grain of salt. This is also just my opinion. For tier 3, our next deck will be Eldlich. This deck is very good when it wants to work, but it doesn't work a lot of the time, so which is why it's here in tier 3. The boards it makes are very good. Tri-Brigade is insane with this deck. I think the only thing holding it back is just the consistency and grind game isn't there. For Rogue, unfortunately, Salamangreat, one of my favorite decks. I do consider in the Rogue tier. The deck did get a boost with the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, but every deck got a boost with Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. So if this deck got boosted by it, then and every other deck got boosted by it, then it's pretty much in the same level. I do think Salamangreat has some legs to be a better deck, but for now, I think it's Rogue. I will say congratulations to the person who got top 32 at one of the YCSs with the deck. It's very cool, and I would love to see the deck list. And then for our first everything else deck, we got the Fleur archetype. Just because Baron de Fleur is an insane card does not mean the archetype is, and it'll just pretty much belong here. So next is Beetroopers. I do believe that this deck is a contender for tier 1. My issue is with it is very prone to Nibiru. This deck has an insane issue with getting Nibiru'd. It's just so unfortunate. The deck is a lot of fun. It's consistent. The grind game is kind of there. It's got the legs for it. Their second wave of support was a big miss, but down the road we could see more. So Alistair, the Invoker. This whole archetype with Alistair and the Dogmaticas with DPE is just absolutely insane. No, surprise there. Alistair, normal summon Alistair, make Mechaba, make DPE. Insane. The fact that you can open another variation of that same combo, you go DPE, and then you normal summon Ecclesia to go get like punishment. There's a lot of ways you could play the deck. It gets to play a lot of hand traps, board breaking cards. I won't say it's the best Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer deck, because I do believe there's one that is significantly better, but it is easily one of the best decks, and I do believe if you're in Tier 1, you have to be able to abuse Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. Despia, we're going to put down here Tier 3. This deck is getting a lot of legs, but it's mainly because of the branded, or not branded, what's the new stuff, Albaz stuff? The new Albaz stuff coming out now in February. I think this deck has a lot of potential to go to Tier 2, Tier 1. This deck has been topping at the OTS/regional level, so it's on people's radars, but unfortunately it being a fusion deck means it does just auto-lose to a very popular side deck card being Dimensional Barrier, and it is very linear when it's trying to do. I might be wrong on that, but I do believe that Despia is a Tier 3 deck, potentially Tier 2. Cyber Dragon, this also goes to the Cyber Dark / part of it. The Cyber Dragon deck is a very good rogue deck. It's very good at breaking boards. It's very good at making boards. Verte Anaconda is natural. Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, again, very good in the deck. It's got a boost because of that, but when everything else gets a boost because of Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, then it also just doesn't move anywhere. Adignister at Tier 3, very good deck. Can win almost every game 1 if the opponent's not maining Kaijus. However, as the format progresses, Godarla is seeing a lot more play just due to the Wind Statue and just being a good way to out-monster. So the Arrival Cyberse is no longer as safe as it used to be. Kaijus are a lot more powerful than they were. These decks that are building boards like Swordsoul, they are not making 3-4 negates. They're making like a negate or 2, and then like blackout. So you have a lot of room to play Kaijus, Lava Golem, Sphere Mode, things like that. And unfortunately, that means the Arrival Cyberse is just a lot weaker. Dinosaurs also joining. Let's reorganize. It's also joining Tier 3. Dinosaurs, one Miscellaneous Source, very good still. But the one misc does mean they have a significantly weaker grind game. They're not trying to grind to begin with, so when you combine that, the deck is just very frail. If its combo gets broken, its boards auto-lose to Dark Ruler, and it has no real follow-up after that. Makes the deck very weak, in my opinion. Plunder Patrol down here in Rogue. Deck is very cool, but it loses to Chalice and Perm and Droplet, Valor. All these cards are everywhere in the current format. Just not very good in the competitive sense, but they are a good deck. We have a player in my locals who plays the deck, and he does very well with it. So I do believe the deck has legs, and again, just because decks are in Rogue does not mean they're unplayable. So this is the Pure Tenyi. I'll just put it down here. Pure Tenyi, it got some legs because of the new support from the Sword-Souls, where they play less Sword-Soul, more Tenyi. I don't think that strategy is good. I think you should just do the opposite. Adamancipator being here in Rogue. Also, just a very weird deck. Block Dragon was its main way to win, but it can still combo. It can technically search Nibiru, which is really good this format, but it's not what it used to be. Prank Kids joining here Tier 2. I know this is a very weird one since we have one Meowmoo, but the deck has shown its legs in the YCS, and I never really thought this deck died. I thought people would just have to adapt to the one Meowmoo, and it showed that the people are doing that now. The top 32 deck list was not playing cards like Polymerization. He was playing just Thunder Dragon Fusions and relying on Vert, which helps dodge around most hand traps, minus, Valor and Imperm. But the deck is very good. I think it's got a lot of room to be explored, and I think it'll be very good down the road. Infernoble down here in Tier 3. I don't think this deck gets enough respect. I helped a friend of mine recently build this deck, and the combo takes forever. I will not lie. The combo takes forever for 3 to 4 Omni Negates, sometimes only 2, and it doesn't play through Interruption. So I'm not convinced that the deck is good enough to be in Tier 2. It makes Tier 2 style combo boards, but much longer, way more work involved. But it gets this board as broken as easy as a deck in the Rogue tier. But because of that weird balance, I think it belongs here in Tier 3. Tri-Brigade. Tri-Brigade, specifically DPE Tri-Brigade, not the Lyrisk deck. Definitely Tier 2 nowadays. I think it might be the best Tier 2 deck now that I'm thinking about it. It does abuse Destroyer Phoenix very well. Destroyer Phoenix Revolt is a very good combination. It gets to play a lot of hand traps. You can metagame a lot with it. I think it's a very solid deck. Live Twin, I personally have not seen or played against this deck, but I do know how it works. The results on it have been very iffy. I don't think it belongs in Tier 3 because it gets to do a lot of stuff. It plays a lot of extenders. It gets to make its board pretty much every turn no matter what. It's very consistent. I think it's a very good deck. I think it's just a little slept on because everybody's playing Destroyer Phoenix, and that deck does not play Destroyer Phoenix very well to my knowledge, but I still believe it deserves Tier 2. We're going to put Heroes here in Tier 3. The main reason for this, again, goes back to the Destroyer Phoenix line. But unlike Salamangreat and Cyber Dragon, this deck makes Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer in a multitude of ways. It doesn't need Fusion Destiny. Fusion Destiny is the preferred way, but they can also Fusion Destiny for things like Malicious Bane, which could be better than DPE in most cases. I don't believe that Heroes quite has the gas to get there, and his board gets broken very easily. It doesn't have any diversity because they lock you into Heroes, but the boards a Hero makes, like Dark Law, Destroyer Phoenix, pretty good. So in my opinion, Hero deserves Tier 3. Next we got Orcust, it's down here in Rogue. Orcust, very good deck, but the No Harp Horror makes it very rough. There is somebody who did well recently with an Orcust deck. I can't remember what the mix. I think it was Orcust Dragon Link, but I think the deck was held up by the Dragon Link aspect. Which, speaking of which, Dragon Link will go right up here in Tier 2. If I had a Tier 1.5, that was a thing in my opinion. It's not. But if it was, it'd be there, along with most of these other decks. Dragon Link is very strong still. Representation is showing that a lot of people aren't playing it. I think it's because the skill gap is very high for the deck, and I think that the deck is very good. I think that just a little bit, it'll probably be the deck to look out for until we get Brave. Moving on up to Tier 1 again, we got, in my opinion, the best Destroyer Phoenix deck. We got Phantom Knights. Phantom Knights is absolutely insane. It's such a good deck. That's the deck I'm currently playing, along with Floowandereeze. Phantom Knights has a lot of board-breaking combinations that you can do. It can play no matter what hand it has for the most part. If you open all spells and traps, you're not playing, but that's fine. It's variance. But anytime you have a monster, you can pretty much play. The deck is just so good at doing what it wants to do, which is nowadays is the Destroyer Phoenix Artifact Dagda play, that you can do that through Nibiru. Very good. Deck is just really good. It's got a recursion, it's got a good grind game, it's got searchable impermanences, basically. The deck is very good. Drytron. Now, I do believe that Drytron is a Tier 1 deck, only for the fact that I feel like it's a weaker Phantom Knight. The combos that it gets to do with Destroyer Phoenix and Dagda get protected by things like Herald, but Herald doesn't solve the issue of Dark Ruler and Impermanence and Chalice and things like that, where Phantom Knights have the ability to do that. You can draw a phase, force your opponent to negate Scythe, and then during your standby phase, when you get your Destroyer Phoenix back, you can then force your opponent again to have another out. So they have to have an out, and they probably used some way to stop you in the middle of your turn. So, in my opinion, Drytron is very good. I do believe it is slightly better than the decks in Tier 2. I do think it has a lot of issues, but It is so just innately powerful, and people are finally realizing the potential of the deck, and it's just getting more and more consistent when people figure out these numbers. And I think the deck's very good. Virtual World we'll put here. I do believe this is just kind of like a Dragon Link-esque deck. It takes pretty much 2 cards to get going. Dragon Link may only require 1, but it does need 1.5 cards in the sense that you need an extender. It doesn't have 1-card combos anymore because of Link Cross's banning and Union Carrier's banning. So both of these decks require basically 2 cards. I do believe Virtual World does what Dragon Link's trying to do, but better. I believe the Crystal Link Calico Lock is still very good. It may not be able to play Destroyer Phoenix. Technically, you can just play Fusion Destinies to try to draw them. I do believe that this deck is very good, though. I don't believe it deserves to be in Tier 2, if that makes sense, but it's not bad enough to be in Tier 3. Like, it's very good. It gets interrupted easily, but I do believe it's a good deck. Here we have Bird Up. This deck is nuts. This deck, like, I hate this deck. I hate playing against it. It's so strong at what it does. Utopic Future, or whatever it's called, is such a good card. Harpy's Featherstorm is such a good card. Ensemble is such a good... Like, everything in the deck is just so good. It's got great follow-up. It's got good grind. It's just such an insanely strong deck. It reminds me of Phantom Knights and Swordsoul, where it can do literally everything. It can break boards. It can start boards. It can grind. It's just, in my opinion, one of the best decks in the format and one of the better decks we've seen in a while. Earth Machine is down here in Rogue, and I would consider the Machina FTK that's going around also down here in Rogue. Earth Machine takes a long time to do a whole lot of nothing, which, I mean, it's great and all, but you know, it's just, why would you do that? If you're going to take long turns, you might as well play something like Infernobles, or, you know, excuse me, or just really anything else. Because the deck is just, it takes so long to set up basically nothing. I do think that it doesn't deserve to be in the everything else tier for the sole fact that the deck has legs to OTK very easily, and it does dump everything out of the deck, and you will have pretty consistent draws for the rest of the game after you've taken 20 minutes to make a board to do nothing. Eldlich. I believe Eldlich is up here around this spot. The Eldlich Zombie World deck is very strong. Zombie World hurts a lot of the meta decks, especially Swordsoul and Lyrisk. Eldlich traps are very good because of Lord of the Heavenly Prison, the card I was very against when it came out. But it's seeing some legs now, and I will admit that I was wrong about it. I do believe that the deck is held back a bit because there hasn't been any good zombie support recently, but I have a low-key hint that my Akashi Eldlich might be the move in the future. And now we'll go to our final Tier 1 deck, and I wish I wasn't saying that. I do believe Sky Striker is the worst of the Tier 1 decks. It has a lot of issues still, but it is one of the premier Destroyer Phoenix combo decks. Being able to set up Destroyer Phoenix, use it as the first spot of removal, and unlocking all your Sky Striker spells is just insane. This deck gets to play, there can be only one efficiently, and that just ends games against most of these other decks in Tier 1. The reason I wouldn't put it higher in Tier 1 is because, well, it does sometimes just lose to itself. And I don't believe decks normally that are in Tier 1 should just naturally lose to themselves. But Sky Striker does it in a way that it's like when it's so ahead, like it feels like it is unbeatable. But when it's behind, it feels like it's just not great. So it's really weird to judge it. In my opinion, as Tier 1, the results alone have said that. It is consistent once it gets rolling, but getting it rolling is the issue. Sky Striker Destroyer Phoenix is definitely a very good deck, and I think it should be on everybody's radar. And if I was going to Pasadena, my choices would be between Sky Striker and Phantom Knights. Altergeist going down here with everything else. I think it's the worst Eldlich deck. I think it's the worst Earth Machine deck, because Earth Machine can be a trap deck. I don't like Altergeist, and I'm going to go ahead and put Subterror down here too. So the reason for these two being down here together, even though, you know, set 5 pass can be very detrimental, and that's basically what Eldlich does. The difference is the Golden Land cards have really good DPE matchups. And what I mean by that is you don't get punished for setting cards and trying to pass against a Destroyer Phoenix, because your cards search other cards, or your cards could be chained and then they get value off of it. Golden Lord just naturally can't be outed by Destroyer Phoenix most of the time. And these decks just suffer a lot. Now Subterror gets to play Destroyer Phoenix and or Dragoon. You know, both of these Altergeist I don't think can really play it. I'm not too sure. And I know they get to get their new card, Pukari, I think is what it's called, but I just don't see it being a good deck. This is a pure Shaddoll, not the Shaddoll Invoked strategies. I do believe pure Shaddoll belongs on this list. It is still a very combo-oriented deck. Windows Pass is still decent. Schism is still a fucked up card. And excuse my language. But I do believe it's very weak in the sense that it's easily interruptible. Ash is pretty popular nowadays. Nibiru is popular. The deck does lose to those, but I do believe Shaddoll's got his own legs. And, you know, I don't know why this is here, but I guess if you're playing pure Dogmatica, you need to be down here with everything else. Dogmatica and other decks is amazing. Obviously, we know how good it is with Invoked. We know how good it is with Flunder. We know how good it is with Eldlich. So, you know, pure Dogmatica belongs in everything else, but the decks that use the Dogmatica with it are very good. So yeah, this is my opinion of the current meta, what decks I think are very good, what decks I think are slightly worse, and what decks I think are just in the fun category with everything else. I do believe that this list has a lot of potential to move around. I think tier 1 is pretty defined. If we were to do a tier, like, you know, top 5 decks only, then, you know, you would just move Sky Striker down here to tier 2 if you were to do a top 5 only. But I do believe that the format is so open and the deck is so good at what it's doing that it should just be in tier 1 with these other decks. This doesn't account for variance too. Like I said, like I would think that Floowandereeze Dogmatica is slightly worse than regular Floowandereeze, but if I did that, we'd be stuck here for hours as I do every minute version of the decks. So these are just generalized deck lists. If you guys would like to see any of these deck lists, let me know. I can try to get them made for you. I'm just recovering from COVID, so I'm finally feeling up to making videos again. But yeah, I think this is the current meta tier list. These are decks I would consider in tier 1 to take to Pasadena. Tier 2 would also be good options for Pasadena as well if you're more comfortable with them. I think I would try to avoid decks in tier 3 Rogue and everything else just because they lose to themselves more often than not, or they're easily outed. But that being said, I do believe that the format is so open that we can see something like Beetroopers topping this YCS again, or we can see something like Despia winning the whole thing. Just because your deck isn't in tier 1 or 2 does not mean it's unplayable. I still play Salamangreat. I love the deck. I have a friend who plays Plunder. He loves the deck. Just play what you want. This format is so open. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please remember to comment, rate, subscribe. Let me know if you like more videos like this, and in the future we can do more. Thanks for watching. Peace, YouTube.